Hi folks, well this is Miguel from the Embargo Man channel. Okay, so as the title of the video said, okay, so this is one country that you notice it. You notice it on the news. You notice it that one country as the population is dwindling down. And once a country has a low birth rate in the population, the economy falls down. Well, this particular country, it is just a beacon of everything. It was just to say that, I would love to go visit that country. Either way, it was once the beacon. This is a country that have developed, that is the hub of advanced technology. It is very advanced in electronics. Their TVs, the brands, the cars also. All right, so as we are talking about is the country of Japan. Okay, back then, or you saying Back to the Future? When you see the movie Back to the Future Part 3, and then Doc in the 1950s, take out the DeLorean. And it says this is a piece of junk. No wonder this is made. These things are made in Japan, right? So put it that way, Japan is one of those hub centers of high technology during the heyday that still Japan is high tech. And I would absolutely that this culture, one is marvelous and beautiful culture of Japan, and all this, they bring you Godzilla and everything like that, back then it was the merge of their economy all started. It all started during the 1950s and 60s when Japanese products were bringing cheap toys and stuff. All of it has begun is that all the development that even where Western companies, even US based companies, have sent an industry in Japan, and the forms of the likes of Sony, Panasonic, Sharp, and all these Japanese companies, and even car companies like Honda, Toyota, and Nissan, and all sorts of these, and motorcycles and all that stuff. It means that just like it is, the Japanese economy it becomes the hub, the center of high tech. All right, so this is where the development of computers and TVs and technology and all this stuff. This was the hub of technology. All right, so this is where Japanese companies are becoming successful, and that country being the center of high technology, rolling high during the 1980s and all that stuff. It is when companies like Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, and all that stuff, seeing that the valuation of the yen, the currency, and then like labor in Japan is not becoming so damn cheap. So this is where Japanese companies like Sony, Panasonic, and all these Japanese companies were investing of making their products in China, not just China, sometimes Korea, Taiwan, and all that stuff. And all what is going on, and what is going on right now, to say the least, of what's going on with Japan. It was once the second largest economy people back then were so scarce of the Japanese companies, Japanese automakers, and Japanese electronic makers and all that stuff. Most likely, suddenly, when electronics and all this area coming around with this, and that most likely Japanese electronic companies were to send to manufacturers their stuff in Taiwan and China and Korea and even Malaysia, Singapore, Southeast Asia, then whoa, and most lately China, and all because of China, then the competitiveness of the Japanese sending all this, it would lead towards China leading the way in the technology, China and South Korea. And yes, China, but because South Korea is also dwindling in their population and stuff. I mean, China's riding high in there, and sort of what, it's not like it is once, and I might say that one country that it is that the Japanese economy wants at first, because of not just American companies but Japanese companies sending their manufacturing to China. They went from the second largest economy to the third largest economy. Now Germany took them over, and all of this, and all because of one thing: population declining. All right, so population declining is what makes the economy, even COVID-19 has made it worse. Where what is going on? I mean, what's going on towards all this stuff? The Japanese yen is in the 140s and gonna go to the 150s and all that stuff. And I'm gonna tell you what, even though the Germany's third largest economy right now, that India might even surpass it in all this. As to what would be next is what, Vietnam. I mean, what's going to be next and what was happening, if all has been settled out high, what is going on with this is that Japan is going back to the 1950s and the 1960s, when Japan used to have cheap labor. All right, so this is where is all the worrisome of that. Just like any country, when there's dwindling their population, and yet all it is because, just put it in this way, put it this in the religious minority family. A religious minority family, they're the 1% who are Christian. All right, especially Catholics. All right, so a Japanese boy from a Catholic family grows up and becomes a priest, instead of finding a nice, beautiful Japanese woman to get married to and form a family. So he decided to become a priest, or like in all of Japanese society, they decide to go the sexless route. I mean, a sexless life, it could be anybody that don't want to have nothing involved with a partner of an intimacy or whatever it is. And then what is dwindling down towards why a country that is so advanced in technology, they are the beacon of technology, is now dwindling down by having the most old folks in the world. Yes, Japan is the country with the most old folks in the world. And then you have China, surpassing them. The fastest high-speed rails are made by Chinese companies. I mean, so suddenly this is what's going on. And then you have TCL, Hisense, and all these Chinese companies outpacing Japan in technology in their sector that Japan once ruled. Even BYD might be surpassing Toyota. All right, so this is where it goes, that ever since China's plans, even though I don't agree with with the form of government of China. But then what it is was a difference. Japan is a democracy, and then what's next is gonna be India, and then what it is, the production of minimum wage, the wage raising that China once began, just like Japan back in the day, as a place for cheap labor. Their wages rising, and then China no longer becomes a place for cheap labor. They're going to Mexico, to India, to what it is, and even especially Taiwan. I mean, I like, just put it this way. Okay, by that time, that China becomes just like Japan in the 1980s, something like that, when wages in China are up so high that it's no longer cheap to make manufacture in China. They're gonna go to Vietnam, they're gonna go to India, they're gonna go to other places. And then what's next for Japan, when this is just like going down from the third largest, from second largest to the third largest and to the fourth largest economy? What's going on with Japan is that the population is dwindling down. This is what it is with the population dwindling down, like, just to just make sense of all these things. All right, so this is where I can just do this comparison of a religious minority in Japan, of a Catholic boy decided to grow up to become a priest, and his workplace would be not providing for the family, but providing for the St. Mary's Cathedral parish in Tokyo. All right, so that's how we're just talking about just one point of the sexless life of Japanese individuals of all walks of life that prefer to do this, they prefer to do that, but instead of finding themselves a partner, finding themselves a wife of a woman, finding a husband or whatever, to form a family, right? And this is where was the retirees, a bunch of old folks, even though that, I mean, that once, this is one crazy thing of all this, even foreigners, people who are probably a woman born in Ukraine owning the crown, but this is all ifs of pieces of all these things of what's going on in Japan and the population and native born people of Japanese descent might come from Peru and Brazil and wherever in Latin America or wherever they're born. So as it is to when they reach the point of this, when the old folks are gone, well, is going to go to that point that's not just of population decreasing, but more of the Japanese yen devaluating with the lack of people, lack of newborns, and then there's less young people or more old people. Where it's gonna go is they gonna go just like everybody else in the recession of COVID-19 and whatever it is going to be worse for them. I mean, a country that I want to visit is going to be worse for them. They have been struggling during World War II. I mean, individuals and like whatever this case may be or the situation. I mean, nobody's perfect. Okay, okay. Pearl Harbor's bombed, and we knew Hiroshima and Nagasaki. America's not even perfect either. So what it is that once they have signed a deal on whatever it is, then, I mean, people were buying stuff that are made in Japan. All right. So what's going on towards all this? That the next thing for Japan would be the devaluation of the Japanese yen, where it goes up to the point that for $1 you get 3,000 yen for $1 or more. This is where stuff from Walmart and stuff will say made in Japan, and everything else that you buy buy will say made in Japan, and everything's going to be made in Japan pretty soon, right? Why? Because it would goes to this. For a matter of fact, even Apple, have Foxconn bought Sharp. It's a company based in Taiwan. So what's going on with all this is that saying that all these companies, even Japanese companies, for example, to say the least, another twist of things when things go bad for one country. For Japan is gonna be the economic renaissance after the devaluation of the Japanese yen, 3,000 yen for $1. And what's going on? It would be like all this of comparison. Not even just Latin America would be so what if. Yes, that's just a comparison to one country, at least to say Japan is a democracy. The minimum wage of the next country would be, if they get rid of this asshole during the Ronald Reagan era. I remember the Ronald Reagan era when they tried to friggin' get rid of the Ortega. All right, so it would be like the same minimum wage equals to the minimum wage in Nicaragua per hour in US dollars, and then 3,000 yen or 5,000 yen for $1. Then what's going on with that? At least to save to the point, companies, electronic companies, like you say US companies like Apple, like saying Microsoft, Google, and all the, or not, I'm just saying companies that make equipment, they will have seen investment and proof. Even like SanDisk and everything, they have proof that, by contrast, as Japanese legacy of making electronics. Look at TSMC, they built making chips in Japan. Even Intel, it would be an investment in Japan after the downfall of the Japanese yen and the currency and all of this, which is 853 yen per hour. If the Japanese yen will be 3,000 yen for $1, and or more for $1, it would be settled in that companies, American companies in particular, involved in technology, looks towards Japan because of the legacy and the history, and all these companies would say. And even so would be for Apple. What would happen? 3,000 yen for $1. What was gonna happen is, like, just kids or young people that are left over, is that once that these certain companies, like certain companies that make stuff, and let's say Apple would be have contract with Panasonic making iPhones, or most likely Sharp makes the iPhones in Toguchi, Japan, and so a factory in Toguchi, Japan makes iPhones, and Toshigi, Japan, and Toshigi Prefecture makes the iPhones at a Sharp factory, because Foxconn owns Sharp. And so that this would be what it is, that your next iPhones after 3,000 yen for $1 would be iPhones that are made in Japan and are made by Sharp. All right, so and then to say the more bang for your buck comes into play. Japanese make good quality products. That means your stuff from Walmart came out a better price, better quality than those high-end designer brands from Europe or something like that, lasting longer, better built textile. Why? Because Japan's economy went so down below that their currency went down the drain, that their minimum wage of Japan equals to the minimum wage of Nicaragua. That's where it goes. So that's what it is. That's where you can find. By that time, you can find iPhones made in Japan. You can find other U.S. electronic companies products that are made in Japan. Even General Electric, or let's say Kenmore, wants a Sears brand. They're going to have Panasonic owning the Kenmore brand during the downfall of the Japanese yen, and then where it goes from there, that the Japanese economic renaissance would go on. You go to a dollar store, you go to Walmart. Hey, you get what your money's worth. You're gonna find your next pair of Nike shoes is going to say made in Japan. Your freaking Chuck Taylor's All Stars, Converse All Stars will say, oh, where do they make them? They used to make them in America. Oh, they're made in Japan, and everything's going to be made in Japan. All right, so that not just in the apparel, but most likely more on the technology sector and all this stuff. Apple computers and electronics and everything made by U.S. companies working along, and even Sony making their stuff back in Japan and whatnot. So it would be like that, and then this is where currency, the valuation, Japanese yen, 3,000 yen for one US dollar, and whatever, the wages in Japan going down the drain. So what's going on with that? All right, the population of a country dwindles the economy. What's going on? That Japan's going to be so damn cheap that even Walmart and Target and all these stores want to look for cheap labor, and then China's labor will be too expensive to make stuff in China. Then they're gonna go back to Japan. I mean, they're gonna go make stuff in Japan. So that's what it is. It's gonna be so common to go to your damn local supermarket and you find your tools, even craftsman tools that are no longer made in America. They're going to improve the quality better than their American-made counterparts by just saying, let's make the tools in Japan. Right? So that's one going on. It's like all what it is. And then Japanese branded cars are going to be so damn dirt cheap. Like saying FMC from the US was and looking to get towards BYD, but then what it is with electric vehicles, FMC might just merge FTMC, T for Toyota, right? So what it is of this, just like they saying an American company being sold to a Japanese company, oldest American auto company to be sold by a Japanese company, it would be kind of odd or something like that. Or maybe Chrysler, but yeah, most likely all this goes to show you that once a country dwindles with their economy, the currency goes so damn low, then it's gonna be just like the only difference that when you compare it to a country in Latin America, if they don't get rid of an asshole country suffering of a dictatorship, Japan, on the other hand, cherish a democracy, flourishes, and like any country with a democracy flourish. They got the prime minister or whatever it is, and whatever is going to happen, even if whatever things happen and so what, then I mean, people watching it on YouTube, you want to see YouTubers from other countries living in Japan. They'll be saying, comparing Japan in the future with their countries and what they're going to live. Oh, this is cheaper than Canada. This is cheaper than America. It is the same or some does. It is the same as I live in the particular country in Latin America, in Central America. Just saying the same, but the only difference is safer. It's a democracy. there's no danger of getting robbed or whatever, and whatnot. So this is just all in question of everything. Just like saying that all of this was going to happen, that once you go from fourth largest economy to fifth largest economy to 10, I mean, this is where I could say where like the Kenmore brand will be made by Panasonic. Freaking Panasonic, the company, will sell some things under the GE brand, appliances and stuff, just because of China's economy getting stronger than the Japanese economy, just because the dip in the population, and what is left over of young people is like, hey, you guys living in Japan, get ready. You're gonna get a job, man. You're gonna get a job by an American company or by a Western company when they're seeking to say, and you see that your currency, and you're saying, oh, how much for a US dollar? The US dollar is 3,000 yen or 5,000 yen for $1 US, and you could say you're gonna travel to the USA, and then you say, okay, this is like now, like sooner or later you find out that Japan is cheaper than America, then you're gonna get a job. You're gonna get a job, man. 5,000 yen or 3,000 yen for $1 US, right? It's gonna be like, it's just crazy out there, right? So then what's going on with this? Then like Panasonic selling RCA TVs, or probably some Japanese company, let's say the Panasonic division in Europe, would go to France, where Thomson Electronics, they're gonna get like the GE and RCA, the GE brands or RCA, whatever it is, and then you're gonna see RCA and GE being sold on those like Panasonic TV or something like that, and then you've seen your iPhones being made by Sharp in Japan. In Toyochi, Japan will be like a iPhone factory replacing China, right? So what's going on is that is going to be the Japanese economic renaissance, where the fate of a very, very down dirt cheap Japanese yen, where an individual would get $1 for 3,000 Japanese yens, and that the economy, that the minimum wages would be settled up for the same minimum wages that Japan will get paid the same minimum wages, where an asshole named Danielle in a country in Latin America getting paid for that. And what else are you gonna do? Japanese young people who are gonna end up making stuff. They're gonna end up making toys, electronic toys. They're gonna making products for Apple at a Sharp factory. How well and how odd is that? So this is where it goes. Then you find it saying, oh, more bang for your buck at your clothes that you buy at Target, or your clothes that you buy. You know what? Either way, is like, once it is that you go and see this, that once that you notice it, I mean, it is like always like that. Western companies, even American companies, always look places for the cheapest labor. They look towards Mexico. They looked towards China, and they even had done some stuff in Japan back then, right? So it is not that easy. That population declining, the devaluation of the Japanese yen, when it reached the $3,000 yen mark for $1, you're gonna end up seeing certain products being made in Japan again. So what's going on with there is like, you know what's going on. The only difference is that once that you notice that the differences, what people were trying to say, oh, Japan back in the 80s used to be very riding high, and then I was like saying, you know what, this is going to happen. It happened in Japan's time, when stuff made in Japan used to be very, very dominating in the electronics and technology sector, that once the Japanese companies, when their currency were strong, a strong Japanese yen has led to Japanese companies moving their factories to China. Then China, with their factories and their brands, are kicking Japan's ass in the technology sector. TCL TVs are selling like hotcakes, and then whatever you get from a TCL TV and something, and then the Chinese economy is going high, and then the minimum wage raises in China to, it goes to the point where like it's not it's not cheap to produce as China, as what have happened with Japan. And with Japan, in the other hand, dwindling with the lower fertility rate, with more old folks living in Japan than young folks, then what's ever left over with Japan dwindling their economy, Japanese yen tanking, and then the topics going down. What else you gonna do? And then what's gonna be next? What's going on is like this. This is, by the time you heard of MAGA, Make America Great Again, at this point during COVID and everything, we're not living in the MAGA era. We're living in the MJ Ga era. MJ Ga is coming soon. MJ Ga means Make Japan Great Again. As you know, heard about Make Japan Great Again. What it is about all this, that is settled with all this stuff. And why in this assembly, why the hell there are less young people and less old people and more old people, and what's the leftover young folks? They're gonna enter the workforce, right? So if they're gonna enter the workforce, that means the investment of companies and contracts and whatever it is that they have seek of a very weak Japanese yen, where the minimum wage of Japan could be equals to the second poorest country in the Americas of their minimum wage, 3,000 yen or 5,000 yen for $1 being paid so low. Then the investments of Apple having Sharp making their iPhones, the investments of saying the Japanese electronic industries, like companies like Hitachi, Toshiba, whatever, and all this. Even Sony have a Sony TV. They just bring their stuff. The only thing, the difference in the label, instead of being somewhere else, with that Japan becoming so cheap, even for American companies, so your SanDisk, a USB drive, or any USB drive with a US branding, and or whatever it would, or HP. What do you say? What it says this? The label is going to say "Made in Japan." Your Nike shoes with a 3,000 yen for $1 happen in Japan, is gonna say, okay, my Nike shoes are made in Japan. Like, what's going on? When Japan's economy dwindles down, everything that you buy in America, or in Canada, or in some countries that they look in, companies looking for cheap labor, when Japan becomes like the Japan of the 1950s, all the stuff that you buy, even Disney souvenirs would say made in Japan. So what's going on is that, get ready for this, get ready for all this dwindling down, old folks living in Japan, more old folks living in Japan than than young folks. But what happened with the young folks? All right, once the 3,000 yen for $1, happens, then the economic renaissance of Japan begins, and then people would be having jobs, going to work, and then this is the 3,000 yen for $1 is the era of the MJ Ga era. The MJ Ga era. 3,000 yen for $1 means make Japan great again. So get ready. Any people in the future who are living in Japan, or they seek to say, okay, why life is so expensive, and they're gonna go, and then they plan to go back to Japan, if life becomes so cheap in Japan that it's going to be equal to a country in Central America, then get ready for all this. Get ready, like say, oh, I'm gonna make some teddy bears, or we're gonna make teddy teddy ruck spin toys or whatever. It's just like, then it's gonna be so damn cheap in Japan pretty soon that sooner or later you go to an Apple store or anywhere else where you could find electronics and your washers and dryers, and when just because of the dwindling down of the 3,000 yen or more for $1 era begins, this where the MJ this is where MJ Ga era begins. With the MJ Ga era begins, it means 3,000 yen for $1, 5,000 yen for $1 equals make Japan great again. That means everything we buy, not just in Japan, but in America, you go to Walmart, there's the blanket. Where's the blanket? It's made in Japan. So, that's it. Get ready. I hope all the YouTubers living in Japan, even if they're not born in Japan, to be ready for all this sets, ready to look the currency, ready to say, hey, how much is $1? By the time you have 3,000 yen and you get $1 with 3,000 yen, you will say, okay, let's go to every single factory in Japan where they're making stuff and whatever it is. Let's go see let's go to a chart factory where they make the iPhone, whatever it is next, or Apple products in general, and whatnot. So you explain all the things about it and whatnot, and say how is life in Japan become so damn cheap that you say you love more living in Japan than living in the country you are living to. So damn cheap, safe, and very courtesy, and people that work so well that your clothes that you buy at Walmart last longer than your $3,000 clothes that you buy from a boutique or something like that. It's going to be like saying, wow, I got more bang for the buck, or my money's worth paying decent Nike shoes, and they say, oh, it's made in Japan. So goodbye, peace out. Please subscribe to the Embargo Man channel. This is what I did. Pretty soon, how it is, fourth largest economy is going to the fifth. When it goes to the 10th and below largest economy in the world for Japan, this is going to be the economic renaissance for Japan, where everything in America that you buy, even toys, will have, or most likely electronics, will have the Made in Japan label pretty soon. Goodbye, folks. Please subscribe to the Embargo Man, and don't forget to make your videos for the people who lives in Japan to talk about the future of Japan. Peace out. Sayonara.